Welcome to the Off Central Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Larry Kirk. I'm joined today by Pastor Jonathan Prothero.
Oh, wow.
Did I say that right?
That was impressive. I was waiting for it.
Yeah, good.
The suspense moment.
The suspenseful moment. Prothero. Is that right?
Did great.
Prothero.
All three syllables. Well done. Round of applause.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Oh, my gosh. Well, we just got out of Easter, which was a great weekend for us at Central. Lot of fantastic moments.
So good.
Yeah,
Such a fun weekend.
Sunrise service, and
people turned up.
I couldn't believe it
every time,
every year.
Every year. It's sort of about 1:45 service beginning.
Yeah,
you look around and you see sort of 10, maybe 15 people.
Yeah,
you think, why was I up at 4:30?
Yeah.
You know, when the alarm went off and it's pitch black, 4:30 at 32 degrees.
At 32 degrees.
Who comes to this? And then all of a sudden...
It's not like we're on a beach and it's going to be 60 degrees in the morning. And
all those people who live in California.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Sunrise services.
Yeah. But then people come out of the woodwork, don't they? All of a sudden, service begins and there's 150 people there.
It was... We almost didn't have enough chairs. There was a lot of people standing. I mean, we didn't have enough chairs down there, because you know how people come in threes or fours or two or singles and all that stuff. So
but it was a beautiful crisp morning. Sun comes up and you're like, this is great.
Yeah.
This is
Pops did a good job with the service, and you brought it home with the communion in the back end, and it was a nice morning, man. Yeah, it was good.
Home run.
It was actually fun to sit back and watch that one.
Oh yeah, and you didn't do anything, did you?
I didn't
even come to help set up the chairs.
I didn't. No, I just kissed babies, high five people.
That's nice.
That's all I did. That was but that was good. It's good morning coffee, donuts.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff to keep you sugared up for the day.
And we needed it. Four services.
Yeah.
It's a lot to go through, but so worth it. I think does that constitute as our biggest Sunday ever? It's getting close, isn't it? Maybe not quite.
I'm trying to remember, when we had multi-site, that kind of trumped that a little bit, just because another campus.
Yeah.
So,
that makes sense.
Yeah. So
still,
but still for like, not having a campus, and that's one of our biggest days, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had to go back in archives for that one, but I'm pretty sure it's close.
Yeah. It was just a great day overall. Lots of people, visitors coming in, and getting to celebrate Easter is just so special. Do you do this thing every year? I usually put on the Passion, and
that's funny. No, I don't actually.
Yeah,
I don't. I mean, I love the Passion.
Sure.
Gosh,
have you seen there may be a?
I did.
Passion 2 on I don't know if you've seen this.
The resurrection, though, right?
The resurrection.
All about the resurrection.
The Passion 2.
The Passion 2.
Jesus dies again. Sorry.
Again.
No, not that.
No, I got you. I knew where you're headed. Yeah, the resurrection.
The resurrection 1. But I mean, Jim Caviezel coming back in, Mel Gibson directing. He said he's got 2 scripts. One that's just sort of run of the mill, and then he said another one that is
wild
on steroids, if I can say that, on the Off Central podcast. Wild and angels and different, heavens and dimensions and all of that to
it. Things,
that would just be insane.
I wonder if you can have a mixture of both, though. A little bit of both.
That would be perfect.
I mean, it's just
sure.
I can't wait.
Oh, I want to see Michael against Hasatan. Let's do it. Let's see those two up against each other. That would be great.
War,
that's a proper fight.
Yeah, that'd be a proper fight.
Yeah. Anyway, let's segue into something we should actually talk about today.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because we were chatting a little bit, and Easter time is obviously it's the most important time in the calendar, really, for us. The death and resurrection is the center. It's what any denomination, any branch of Christianity is agreed around, as much as we disagree about other things, how to do communion or whatever,
or church or anything,
or church, all of that sort of stuff, the sacraments and governance, all of that gets put aside when you talk about the cross, because everyone's pretty much agreed around the importance of the death and the resurrection. And within that, I think it's massively important to talk about what Jesus went through, and then how that relates to us. Because I don't know about you, but I think the question that I often get asked the most by people who are seeking or searching into faith is, what is the role of suffering, and why do we need suffering? And should suffering be a part of our world if we have a good God? And how are those two things compatible with a good God, yet pain and heartache? A good God, yet all the mess that we see in our world, not just mess caused by other people, because there's the violence between man and like war, or what's happening in the Ukraine right now, all the horrendous acts that are happening there. You know, one man just deciding, I want this piece of land, and then invading homes and ripping things apart. That's kind of man on man. And I think we can understand sometimes that God doesn't always intervene in those moments. Like he lets us live out our own consequences. If we choose to do harm, like we have to bear those consequences. But then there is suffering that happens that isn't necessarily man-made. There are, there's earthquakes, there's volcanoes, there's sickness, kids getting diagnosed with whatever. There's miscarriage. That the litany of suffering goes on and on and on. And I think so many people struggle to find, how is it compatible with this good God that we preach about on an Easter? And how does that come together? I'm sure it's a question you've been faced time and time again.
Yeah, it is. And I think, I shared a little bit, not totally on that, but I did talk about that a little bit on Easter, just from, and I shared about the Leonardo da Vinci painting, the Virgin and Child of St. Anne, and how the Louvre is that how you say that? The
Louvre.
The Louvre. Oh, it's just the Louvre.
No E on the end.
Yeah.
Just the
it's
Louvre.
Spelled that way, but it is. It's the Louvre. The Louvre. Okay.
Yeah.
On the back end of that, like when they over cleaned that painting and it took away the shadows, the dark shadows, and it made it bright and sunny, and I just related it to, that's how life isn't. It's not always bright and sunny. That there is a lot of pain, there is a lot of things. And I think if we over clean the message of hope, because isn't it easy, John, do you find it easy to really say something from the platform about hope, and hope is essentially getting you out of something?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Instead of God walking you through it. You want to, I know I want to extract people out of pain.
Sure.
And because I want to be extracted out of pain.
Yeah.
So I'm guilty. I can't say that for you. I think I'm guilty sometimes of over cleaning the message of hope, because I want people to step out of their pain or come out of their pain. And eventually maybe they do.
Yep.
But even in the midst of that, some of the greatest people that you read about in history, some of the greatest preachers have some of the greatest horror stories.
Yes,
and lived with it their whole life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their whole life.
Absolutely. I think humans will do just about anything to avoid suffering.
Yeah.
On any level, and enhance pleasure.
Sure.
That's the culture we live in today. Like, get as much joy and pleasure you can out of life.
I don't think it's any different than prior either. I mean, I know that we're pretty much an adult, consistently getting worse. It seems that way. Indulgent type of lifestyle. The less pain, the better. The bright, the sunnier, the better. All of that, and we don't enjoy the rainy days. When it comes down to it, the suffering in the rainy days is when there's some of the greatest growth that can happen in a person's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It's always been that way in history. I think nowadays we're just more sophisticated in our approach to being able to actually avoid suffering.
Yeah, because you just made a mention about war. Like, why are we in this war?
Ridiculous.
Like, why? It's stupid.
Yeah, completely.
Like, everybody thinks that way now.
Yeah.
Like why are we in this? Like, are we in high school?
Yeah.
This is,
for lines on a map.
For lines on a map. What's this for? Like, you're creating a humanitarian crisis because why? Because you want some property?
Yeah, for power, you will die and it'll all go to somebody else one day.
Exactly.
All this thing we do to hoard and gain and build a legacy for ourselves. But we've definitely become more sophisticated over time in avoiding suffering or avoiding things that we find displeasurable in any kind of way. That's why we've created AI, so that I don't have to write this email because it's suffering on a micro level. Yeah. And that's the life of convenience, right? We have washing machines because I don't want to spend 4 hours doing this thing. I want to avoid any displeasure in my life and spend all of my time doing pleasurable things. And don't you think today's culture is particularly inept at dealing with crisis, at dealing with suffering, at dealing with hardship? Because we're so pampered. We're so used to but not only are we bad at dealing with it, but I think we're bad at understanding the benefits of it.
Well, I can Google it. Like if I got a problem, I'm just going to Google it so I can fix it.
You're right. How do I fix this? Yeah.
I'll go to YouTube. They got some really good stuff there.
Yeah.
That'll eliminate my...
How do I repair my marriage? YouTube.
YouTube. Like I bet if you type that in, there would be a bunch of marriage stuff that comes up. Like seriously.
Absolutely.
It's like that right now. It's, what can I do? I guess we're the quintessential consumers, right? Yeah. And consumerism, Western culture, consumerism is what can I get out of this with the least amount of commitment to it?
Yeah, exactly. Least amount of responsibility, all of that. But to your point, it's made us not be able to see what suffering actually can do for us.
Yeah.
Because we're so insistent on avoiding it at all costs. We actually, we don't enter into it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And then we don't learn what we need to learn out of it, coming out of it.
Yeah.
And that, I think, why do people assume that a good God wouldn't allow suffering? Good doesn't necessarily equal no suffering, because sometimes through suffering, good things happen.
Well,
which is exactly what you said, right?
Which is the cross, right?
Which is the cross.
Friday was the day of pain, I said. It was the day of pain and suffering.
Yeah, you broke it down really well into three days.
That was a day of warring, or the day of warring. A day of pain, suffering, cross, nails, hands and feet, crown of thorns, beaten beyond recognition.
Right.
I think that's a lot of questions that people have too. Why would God do that to his son?
I think of it differently. Shane Willard described this well, penal substitutionary atonement.
Yeah.
It's a very fancy way. Penals, where we get the penal institution from, right?
Institution.
There's a penalty. Substitution means there was a penalty, but substitution means somebody substituted for us. And then atonement atoned for that. So penal substitutionary atonement. The question is, right, there was a price that was paid, as Shane put it, but who was owed? Right. I like the picture of C.S. Lewis and The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, yeah, of course you do.
Of course, because he's English.
Exactly.
And because it's a children's book, so I can understand it. Yeah. I can follow this theology.
Yeah.
But think about it, right? Edmund is one of the protagonists, and the witch ends up owning Edmund and saying he belongs to me because of his betrayal of his own family and because he lied, right? Yeah. And so the question for God, or for Aslan being the God archetype character, how do I buy Edmund back? Who am I going to pay? Aslan doesn't pay himself.
That's the word redemption, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But Aslan pays the witch. He pays death.
Yeah.
But he pays with it with his own life. And so I think that's what God does. It's not Jesus paying God back and protecting us from God. It's
not at all.
It's us. We've given, like Edmund did, our own lives over to death through sin, because of the wages of sin of death. And so God isn't paying himself back. God is paying death back, because it's like we signed under the contract, the dotted line. And then God is saying, I'm going to fulfill the cost of this contract through my own life. I'm paying death back with my own life, and then purchases us back, right?
Yeah.
So that's obviously a much more beautiful way to think about it. God doesn't have to pay himself back. Right. God pays death back, and then obviously overcomes death by being resurrected to life again.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, don't forget that God is not outside of your suffering. God enters into your suffering.
That's right, buddy. Yeah.
He knows everything that you felt. He's felt times 100.
And the Hebrew writer tells us that. Right. That we serve a God that is well versed in your personal pain.
Yep.
in your suffering. That's why the day of pain was the physical pain. It was emotional pain. It was relational pain. It was on pain on every level that a human being would experience in life.
Right.
Relational pain, rejection, emotional pain, the rejection versus what was happening to him personally. Came to his own received him not. He experienced emotional stress, trauma, and obviously physical.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
By his stripes.
Yeah. And your dad did such a great job of Easter morning sunrise service of saying, and all of that pain that you just mentioned pales in comparison to the spiritual suffering that he had to go through.
That's right.
Like all of that it's like, it's just so minuscule in comparison to him experiencing separation from the Father and experiencing that spiritual weight of becoming sin for the world. So and we come to God with whatever it is we're complaining about, our loss, not understanding. And I think we get angry with God because we don't understand that God doesn't just understand, he empathizes. Like, you experience betrayal, I experience that too. You're experiencing sickness, I know what it's like to go through physical pain too. You're experiencing loss of a loved one, I know what it's like to lose my father and the ones who I loved walking on this earth. And no other religion in the world, I can't think of one where their deity, their God, their whoever, savior enters into suffering. Like in Islam, God is just, he's somewhere up there, Allah's somewhere up there, and he's so distant and sovereign. He's not a God that necessarily enters into that pain. Even Buddha fasts for a while, but that's about it. Nothing like the God who experiences all the same suffering.
I wanted to make a funny there.
Don't.
I know. PC. I can't. Yeah, I know.
We can't get canceled on this show.
Yeah. Buddha didn't look like he fasted too much. But anyway.
So there's actually different images of him. We can go into a history of it. But the one that you can find skinny ones because he was a prince and he was really fat and then he went anyway. But no, he's not so much.
Right.
But there was, so let's begin by acknowledging Jesus and God doesn't ask us to enter into anything that he's not willing to enter into himself. Your child is sick. God knows what it is to have his child experience all of that. And so that's always my starting point whenever I talk about suffering is just know that whatever you're experiencing, God knows that same pain too. You went through divorce, God knows what that pain feels like. You've been cheated on, God knows what that pain feels like. And I can go on and on through the list.
Over and over.
Yeah. Your children walked away from you and out of the house.
Over and over again.
God's experienced that, but for thousands of years. Right? It just piles on. And so you have to start there. Absolutely. When it comes to suffering as well, though, there's so many thoughts on this. You mentioned it as well. Suffering is what grows you. Can you grow without experiencing some kind of pain or discomfort? You have to think about it, though, don't you?
You really do. You really got to think about it.
That's the problem, isn't it?
It's
not obvious.
No. I think there's moments where you can grow. I remember moments in my own personal life where there's just such a, you have a spiritual hunger for God, and you do grow through that. But where was the starting point? The starting point back here was it catapulted that spiritual hunger because of pain back here.
Right.
So it's like, I don't know if I can separate the two because it actually led me to a spiritual hunger. When I felt lost, when I felt purposeless, when I felt like I didn't have a plan and just things in your life that what you desired isn't there. It's not coming to fruition for your life or whatever the personal things are, but it all started in pain back here.
Yeah.
And so that catapults you to a new life in Christ. And then there's a hunger with that, but where it started was in pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's every time.
Yeah.
And we have to be really careful here not to minimize people's pain because
not at all.
What some people are going through is super legitimate and valid.
Not at all, because when on that Easter weekend I talked about a waiting period too. You know, there was a waiting period on that Saturday. It was a day of confusion. And I think there's people that right now they're listening to this that may be confused about, you know, where's God in my pain? Where, you know, is there a purpose behind it? Am I ever going to get alleviated from it? What's, you know, I mean, I know people personally right now that friends of mine and that are going through a lot of pain, physical pain.
Right.
And they're just, is God ever going to heal me? Am I just going to have to live with this the rest of my life?
It's frustrating, isn't it? At times,
so frustrating, you know. And it's really that day of waiting and day of confusion because in the day of confusion sometimes you start doubting.
Yeah.
You know, because there's a delay and you get discouraged and you get, you know, you feel all those emotions.
And then you get mad.
And you get mad.
I get mad with God.
And then you come back around like, okay, God, let's do this again, man. Let's, you know,
we're good now.
I'm good. Let's go at it. And then you know, it's that cycle, you know, for people. And so, we don't want to minimize anybody's.
No. And some of it's like really intense.
So heavy.
Like some people, sometimes it's small and we do need to just get over it.
Yeah.
You know, you're having a bad day at work. Like, you know, okay.
Yeah. Right.
That's tough.
Right, yeah.
But my friend over here, his child has bone cancer. So, you know, like, tell me about your pain. Right. So sometimes we just get too insular and self-centered and too focused on what we're experiencing in our own heartaches or whatever. And they're not that particularly valid, or we overemphasize them. But some people obviously do go through real pain. It's so frustrating. Like, why am I not seeing? And to me, that's also, don't you think that is evidence, I think, of God as well, is that we have this internal justice system. We know when things aren't in order.
Yeah.
Like there's something, this isn't how it was meant to be. And nobody has to teach us that. It's very internal. If you see a child getting beaten by a fully grown adult, nobody has to teach you that's wrong. You don't need an ethics class or a PhD on morality to learn all the scenarios on whether that's okay or that's not. What scenarios is this okay in? You just know deep down in your bones and in your spirit, this is wrong. And so there's some kind of spirit-given internal justice system, this righteousness that's implanted in us. And I think if anything, that's evidence for spirit living inside of you when you know that what I'm experiencing isn't how it was meant to be.
Right. Yeah, something's amiss.
Something's amiss.
It's misfiring. You know, it's like an engine that has a spark plug that's not good.
Right.
If it's an 8-cylinder, all 7 spark plugs could be firing on, but if there's one out, the engine gets clunky.
Right.
And it doesn't run right. Yeah. It's like that's anything, you know. That could be anything. Could be anxiety in a person's life. Yeah. I know when I experience anxiety occasionally, like it's just a miss. Like I know it's misfiring. Like, well, what is that? Right? There's something amiss there. That's not how God intended me to fire. Yeah. You know.
But you know that internally.
Yeah.
Like that's not a lesson you have to learn over time or some mentor teaches you. No. It's what I would call the witness of the inner spirit, you know, knowing that this is out of alignment.
Even watching someone like just beat someone to a pulp.
Sure. Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
Like it's sometimes at UFC fights or something like that, boxing matches, things like that. I can tolerate it for so long, but then to a certain point, it's like, man, it's just violent.
Yeah.
There's so much violence in it. You know me. Sure. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
You know,
not a pansy.
No, I'm not at all. Not at all. But watching that, I'm thinking, man, that's a child of God. Right. Like it's like, I don't think we should be doing that to each other. You know what I'm saying? You know, there's
for your own brain.
For your own, yeah. It's
just like Jello. Isn't it? But it's just turning to mush.
Right. It's just a miss, though, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's like, man, you watch that, or you know, you watch a street fight or something. You just feel. Like it's just brutal.
It's so brutal.
The hatred and the anger, the visceral, the things that are in a person that would do that to someone else, a human being. I mean, it's just, it's just you feel it, you know, and then again, it's not anything that, you know, you read in a textbook. It's just something you feel.
I think it is super innate. And people who say, well, God can't exist because there's evil in the world. And I tell people, you can't even use that word evil, because if there was no God, there is no good and evil.
Yeah.
There just is.
Yeah.
You can't tell me, I mean, if we're just a byproduct of atoms and everything coming together. That's all it is. There's no right and wrong. There is no objective right and wrong. You can tell me subjectively what you feel, but there's no objective truth. We're just atoms and molecules pieced together and arranged in an arbitrary way. And so people start using categories that are actually stolen from Christian categories. Like you have no right to talk about right and wrong. You can only talk about what you prefer or don't prefer, or what's beneficial for society or not beneficial for society. But the non-believer, the atheist or the agnostic, has no foot to stand on. They have no standing when it comes to ethics in the objective sense. They can't use the word evil. I'm like, as soon as you use that word, you're telling me you believe in a God.
Yeah.
Now, there's a different question of whether you like that God or not.
Right.
Do you like a God that permits evil? Do you like a God? Well, that's a whole different discussion that you can have. Do you think, I'm going to segue here a little bit.
Okay.
Do you think God causes suffering? Or do you think God only allows suffering? Too much?
I don't know.
Neither do I.
Is it to the place where he doesn't even have to cause it, that he just knows humanity's going to create it themselves?
Yeah.
By the governments they set up to overlord or to misuse abuse of power or you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, all of those things. I mean, it's a hard, do I think God essentially does, I mean,
we'll think of like a disabled child, you know. Yeah. Does God cause that, or is it just earth happening? God allows certain things to happen.
I just think my thoughts are, there's things that happen in the world that, you know, if you get sick or something, it's not always on you. You could be a runner and healthy. I mean, I know people are super healthy, then all of a sudden it's like, what the heck happened to them?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Some kind of disease, some weird, random.
And then you know people who eat lard and bacon 10 times a week and they're still living till they're 95.
My grandmother had bacon every day of her life and biscuits, and she lived to 94.
Oh, my gosh.
Maybe that's the ticket. You know?
If only I could believe that.
It's true.
That's unbelievable, isn't it? But it seems so arbitrary, doesn't it? You'll have somebody who eats so healthy and they're eating their lemongrass and wheatgrass,
like fried potatoes and corn oil, and I mean the worst oil, seed oil you could get. You know,
she's made a different stuff.
Not olive oil, seed oil, the worst.
that Italian food.
I mean,
that's unreal.
Make homemade biscuits and gravy and K-Rose syrup, which is the worst thing you could ever eat on the planet, with corn syrup.
Oh my God. 94.
Right. I remember her as I was a kid. She made these biscuits and she had this corn syrup and the K-Rose syrup. It's white syrup, you know. We put butter and put the syrup down and stir the butter in the syrup, take the biscuit and sop it up like that, you know. I remember
like the batter,
and she was old.
Oh no, I got you. Yeah, syrup, just homemade corn syrup.
Just like corn syrup out of the thing. K-Rose. It's called K-Rose
with
syrup.
homemade biscuits.
With homemade biscuits on the side. Take the butter, stir the butter in the corn in the syrup. Right. Take the biscuit, sop it up. Right. That was our breakfast.
You're like a biscuit, butter, and sugar.
Right. Just. 94. So one day she was older. She had this K-Rose syrup in there a long time, right? And at the top, I looked at it, I said, Grandma, at the top of this K-Rose syrup, there's a little bit of mold on top of that, right? Because it'd been sitting in there for God knows how long.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And corn syrup hardly ever goes bad, but essentially it got a little bit of...
It doesn't crystallize.
She goes, don't worry about it. It's just a little bit of penicillin. You'll be all right.
That's maybe why she lived so long.
94. Yeah.
She kept eating that penicillin. Oh, yeah.
But to come back around from that story to you know, why, you know, things happen like that. And I just think just happens. It's life.
Yeah.
And I think we live in a broken world, and when I mean a broken world, I mean we're just subject to it. To this life.
Yeah.
It's the life that God's given us. Let's live it to the fullest is what we can now. But I'm not promised tomorrow either.
Yeah. That's so true. That's such a good way of saying it. Like, people often ask Jesus why. Like, why is this person sick? Was it their sin or the sin of their fathers?
Right. And how did he respond?
Well, he always said you're asking the wrong question.
The wrong question. Yeah.
Like the why question ultimately has nothing to do with you, which is kind of what God says to Job. Like, I'm sorry, were you there at the beginning of creation? I didn't realize I had to answer to you.
Yeah.
And then God goes on this massive monologue where he just kind of like all the questions that were posed to him over 38 chapters or something like that. God's just like, I don't have to answer any of you.
I wish I was more humble.
Yes, right.
Humility.
That's such a good take, and really important for people to learn, because we become so self-righteous.
Oh my gosh.
I can fix suffering.
I admit it.
Yeah.
I admit I'm selfish at times.
I know what's best for this person's health. I know what's best for fill in the blank.
Right.
But Jesus always says, why is the wrong question. The question you need to ask is what? Not why did this happen or why is this person sick, but what can I do for that person?
Yeah.
How can I bring healing into their world? How can I bring solidarity into their environment?
Entered into our suffering, we should enter into others.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether or not God uses you in that moment, because I've seen that happen, right? I've seen healing happen in a person's life when you enter into their suffering with them and you pray and God does a miraculous moment. But I think a lot of it is, Jesus entered into a lot of people's suffering and there was healing and there was things. And I think we take that and we're like, okay, that's for everybody. We're going to heal the world.
Right.
But I just always go back to the scripture where Jesus didn't do anything his Father didn't tell him to do.
Yeah.
I think of all the other people that he walked by that he didn't heal. That's they don't write about that.
Yes,
although they should have.
Sure.
I mean, in one particular passage, it says that he could do no miracles, in
his hometown. Yeah.
So I'd love to know a little bit deeper.
I know, right?
Like, did he try?
Yes. Did somebody ask?
And he couldn't do it,
right?
Or the Father didn't tell him to do it, and
That's so awkward. That's a hard picture, isn't it? For Jesus trying and praying for someone and nothing happens.
It's hard for all those who are listening to this right now to picture that. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, Jesus can do anything, well, he didn't. He couldn't.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. It should be said he limits himself.
Yeah.
Because we have to be willing participants.
That's right.
So he couldn't because it says because of their lack of belief.
Yeah.
And so they weren't willing to partner with God, and that's the decision God's made since the beginning. He partners with Adam and Eve, and the moment we decide to step back from that, God is a gentleman and says, "Okay."
That's right.
He's not going to impose healing on somebody who doesn't believe.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a weird thought, though, isn't
it? But again, think about all the people by the pool of Shalom.
Yeah. Just the one gets healed.
Just the one.
Yeah.
He let the other ones lay there.
Right.
I hate to be so crass about it, maybe, but I always think of that. Mm-hmm. That's something that
it's not a guarantee for everybody. Just because you become a Christian, that means all of a sudden you get healing whenever you ask for it.
Yeah, and that is a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
It's a hard pill to swallow. But when you go through your own suffering, when you go through your own thing, you can empathize. With people. Mm-hmm. When you're a young man, when I was a young man, I didn't really empathize with people because I was just healthy as a horse.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I guess horses are healthy, but not all horses are, but you know what I mean?
Now you got those cracking knees and cracking hips.
Cracking ankles. And sound like a bowl of Rice Krispies.
Snap, crackle, and pop. So go down the stairs.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like at my house.
Right. What's he making down there? Just walking.
Is that bacon? No, just it's not the crackle of bacon. That's my niece.
Yeah. Got the foam roller out on your spine.
Yeah. It's just it's you can empathize. I think when later on in life with people that go through things that experience something, and I think it makes you more sensitive to those things as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It opens up your heart completely to those people going through real pain.
Yeah.
It always, and I don't know about you, I've always found that the people who champion different causes like cancer research or whatever it is, they're the people who have been through that.
Or had a personal close loved one that experienced that. Yeah.
Exactly. Like all of a sudden their heart and their capacity to want to help other people suffering from that same thing is increased tenfold.
Oh yeah. My wife hates to run. And she did a 5K a while back, pre-COVID.
Yeah.
She did a 5K, and the reason why she did is it was a cancer thing because she lost her sister to breast cancer awareness.
Right.
And it's amazing what you'll do out of your own comfort zone to help a cause that touched your life very, very closely.
And you put yourself in discomfort. You enter in some way to that suffering.
Yeah.
To enter into suffering doesn't mean you just hurt yourself like the other person is.
No, not at all. But she hates to run, and her, you know, she's had some knee stuff, and she's done a lot of like weights over the years, so squatting and things like that. So her knees are not the greatest, right. but she, you know, in that run, she had to, you know, barrel through like some tendonitis in the front part of her, like she'd wear those bands around her knees so to just barrel through it. You know?
Right.
But it's amazing what you'll do though when you yourself experience the suffering or someone close to you, personally close to you, you'll go far beyond what you could ever think you could.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of like, that's the beauty of healing, isn't it? Because you become bitter or you do something to make it better.
Right. That's
you become locked in the questions of why and how, and this shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, because my sister-in-law believed God was going to heal her.
Right, yeah. And what do you do with that?
Right. She totally, and Teresa was such a person of faith. Like we idolized her in the family because she was such a person of faith. I think she was probably about maybe 10 years older than we were.
Gotcha.
Maybe a little bit more than that.
Right.
But
she just had that big sister aura, you know,
just believed God, loved Jesus with all of her heart. I mean, in the word, she's crazy in God's word all the time. This is prior before she got sick. Like she's just such a person of faith. And to see that, it can rock your faith a little bit.
Yeah.
It can really like set you back if you allow it to. You can, like you said, you can get bitter over that, and if you don't do something about it. The beautiful part about my wife was entering into that suffering. She would go. This is when our kids were little. She'd leave the boys with me. That was a party waiting to happen. She'd leave the boys with me, and she would go up there and take care of her. She'd fly up to Indianapolis and entered into that pain,
right?
And would change her dressings.
Man, spend her vacation time taking care of her sister.
Laid next to her at bed, talking to her all night. Just entered into her pain.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen such. I don't know if I could do that.
Right.
But she.
So it's devotion. Yeah. And that's the calling of the church.
Yeah.
On a wider scale.
Yeah.
And that's the calling we have individually. It's above your pay grade to know why.
Gosh, yeah.
But it's not above your pay grade to help out if you have the power to do it. What's that proverb? If it's within your means and within your power.
Yeah.
You know, to do something about it, you really have the obligation to do something about it.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people don't have enough time, money, and power in their lives to lay next to somebody in their deathbed and just spend time with them?
Yeah.
You know, there's no real excuse for it, is there? And so that's for me, I think, what the church has to focus on, rather than getting into philosophical questions and debates about why God allows evil and suffering, is just to say, well, we live in a broken world, and I'm much more interested in trying to heal the broken.
Yeah.
And to be a part of restoration.
Wholeness to it.
Wholeness.
Yeah.
And what would it look like if every human being brought wholeness and restoration?
Yeah. And regardless of the outcome. See, that's the
yes.
That's the other part of that.
Or without a clause.
That's the other part of hope, right? that we try to brighten it up to again extract someone out of their pain so that they can be truly whole, like in a sense of here and well-being in this moment. But what if that's just not the lot that is there?
It's such a great question to ask.
Yeah.
I remember somebody really struggling to have a child, and they were really in their faith, and she was really spending time. And I said, what if God doesn't give you a child? Will you still follow him? And it felt like an ultimatum, like, give me this or we're no good. And it's like, and I understand that on an emotional level. I don't understand. I haven't had a child or give birth or anything like that, but I can try and sympathize as best as I can with that kind of pain and that desire to say, well, God, if you can't even do this for me, then I'm out. But at the same time, how conditional is your love towards God? Does he have to fulfill certain things for you in order for you to believe and to enter in? Because his love was unconditional towards us. I think that's what Jesus is getting at. Love the Lord with all your heart, all your strength, all your soul, with all of it. Don't put provisos and conditions on, as long as my family stay healthy, or as long as I'm financially stable and never have to face, difficulty in that area of my life, or whatever it is. So like you said, hope, but without putting the provisos on there. So and that's what faith is. Yeah. Right? I've always defined faith that way, as being okay with an outcome that you may not necessarily want. Yeah. And trusting God in it anyway. Yeah. I'm sick. God, I'm believing for healness, but I trust that if I don't get that, you still have my best interest. Yeah. And that is faith. Yeah. As I understand it anyway in scripture. Maybe you think I'm wrong. No. It's definitely the, again, it's not an outcome. And that's the problem with us, right? It's always an outcome-based Christianity or an outcome-based thought on faith, because, you grew up in circles. I think you did maybe a little bit. I know I did. That, they just didn't have faith. That's why they died. Right. Or that's why they didn't believe enough. Or, all of those things, you grow up with, you hear those words. And so it's pounded in you that the fact that it's all about an outcome-based thing. Yeah. But the problem with that is I know some really good people that probably had more faith than I did and still died. Yeah. And the opposite is also true. There's some people who have no faith and great things happen to them.
And great things happen to them. So there's no rhyme. There's kind of like this thing, like you're just trusting God in it. And that's what we have to come to the place where we just trust God with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trust him with my own suffering, trust him with our own issues and problems. Trust the Lord, I trust you with that. That doesn't mean that I go and do whatever I want and to say, okay, I'm going to trust you with that, and I'm going to do all of this, so because I'm on a better outcome than I think that you can get, like in your brain. But no, God, I'm going to trust you with it. I'm going to do my part, but I'm just going to trust you with it, God, whatever the outcome is in this moment. And for my friend or for this person, God, I want to trust you with that. And I just, I think a lot of times we, what I always say is we put it in the hands of God, but we really want to take it back. We really want to, bring it back and try to, in our own strength, try to figure that out. And try to get to the bottom of it, so to speak, and where I just need to trust God in that, in that parts of my life, whether it's suffering or whatever the good, the bad, the ugly in my life, I just got to trust him with it. Yeah.
It's kind of a heavy topic, but I think it's so central to so much of the theme of scripture, and right at the center of our faith in every denomination is this suffering moment with resurrection and life and new birth that's wrapped up in all of that. Yeah, I think Gen Zers are really questioning their faith when it comes to this because again, I think we overpaint the picture of hope. Yes, yeah. Well, what they're seeing is not the hope that the church is saying. What we're speaking about. We're taking the painting and over cleaning it. Yeah. Instead of, there's hope in pain. There's purpose in our pain. And I'm with you on it. Like I'm suffering with you with this. Yeah. Like I see the same things you're seeing in the world. I'm with you on that. I feel that as well. And do I want that for that group of people? No, I don't want that for that group of people.
but let's not sit back and complain about it. Let's enter into it.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, let's actually enter into it and make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Even though I may not be able to fix that in my own power and my own strength, but if we can enter into a space of someone suffering and help them through some of the darkest days of their life, just like Jesus, you know, did for the thief on the cross in his worst hour. Mm-hmm. It was the thief's best day.
Oh, can you imagine? Can you imagine the freedom he must have felt in that moment? Like,
today you'll be with me
in paradise.
Oh man.
I mean, those words, the life, I mean, talk about healing.
He didn't take him off the cross. He didn't.
Yeah.
He said, "Nah, today you'll be with me."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the eternal perspective we have to have with all of this as well. That there's an eternity.
Yeah.
There's another age. There's a moment where all wrongs get righted, where justice comes in.
That's right.
That's the picture in Revelation. The good judge comes.
Yeah.
And he rules and reigns, and all things get put right.
Yeah.
And that's the eternal hope that we have to live with.
That is the eternal hope.
Things go wrong, messed up here today, but we keep our heart right. We do what we can in this moment, and and God will put things right.
There's hope for if someone's suffering. There's hope for healing in that moment because by His stripes we're healed.
Yeah.
So there's hope in that, but there's also hope in eternity as well.
Yeah.
Like I may be suffering now, but my suffering can end, and I can enter into paradise. I can enter into that place with God, where there's no more pain, no more suffering. You know, and so there's hope in all of it. There's hope in the darkness of the suffering. Yeah, in the midst of it.
Yeah, it's like you've been brought out of certain suffering. You are experiencing it, but so you've been healed. You are being healed, and you will be healed. Yeah. You know, I think that sort of picture works just as well for healing as well.
Yeah, when you I go back to the story of Lazarus when Jesus brought Lazarus out of the grave. Think about that moment for the family. How amazing would it have been if you had a brother or sister, or if I had a brother or sister that Jesus came along and just brought them out of the grave. Yeah, and it's like, holy smokes, this is unbelievable, right? This is unreal,
right?
But at the same time, eventually he had to die.
Yeah, he still dies.
You know, he still dies at the end of the end of the story. Yeah, right. They don't share that in the scripture, but eventually he dies. And eventually we all will. And that's our eternal hope.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hope of resurrection, that death is defeated.
It's defeated.
Doesn't get the final say.
Doesn't.
And that's where our hope is, and that's the beauty of Easter. That's the beauty of resurrection. It's amazing. And maybe just a final thing, we've got to wrap up here, but just to say, if you're going through real heartache, pain, whatever it is, betrayal, confusion, just don't isolate yourself is all I would say. That maybe it's not a church body. If you're not a Christian, that's too new to you. That's okay. Although I can recommend a church body, but find people you can stand with in solidarity. Find people who can come around you and lift you up and edify you.
Yeah.
And so often we just isolate in pain. I'll just deal with this in myself. And it's like, I think dogs sometimes do it. They run away from their owners when they're about to die because they don't want their owners to experience. I don't want to be a burden on the rest of the world. Yeah. And we've got to get out of that animalistic mentality.
Yeah, back in the hillbilly days, the dogs would go under the porch to die.
Right, yeah, they hide.
Yeah, they would literally burrow themselves under a porch or something. And
it's still like a thing, isn't it? Dogs will, or animals.
Cave,
I just use that as sort of an illustration for what we do sometimes is I'm just going to retreat. I'm going to withdraw and shut everybody out. And that way I don't have to be a burden on people's lives. Yeah. I think that's so much of a lie that the enemy wants to do. If he can get you suffering, then get you isolated.
It's not nobility doing that. You're not more noble by you know what, I don't want to bother anyone.
Right.
You're actually withholding blessing in people's life because that's what they want to do for you to help you through it. And maybe you need a little bit of humility in your life. Yeah. In that moment.
You have to be willing to help yourself too.
That's right.
Yeah.
To allow someone to come in, enter into your space.
Yeah. Because I know people are kind of addicted to their suffering.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to move forward in life because I've experienced this.
That's right.
I don't have to get on and face any responsibilities or obligations or maturity in my life because I went through this pain. And so I'm just going to sit here in this pain, and we become like addicted to that moment in time, locked in it rather than moving forward. So I just always tell people, get connected in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We say it around here a lot. Don't do life alone.
Don't do it alone. It was never meant to be.
No.
Ever.
Never.
Always in partnership.
Well, that concludes today's podcast. Thanks, Pastor Jay, for tuning in with us today. And we look forward to all that God's doing, not only through your life, my life, and the church's life, but also those who are listening through your life. So I hope that in some way this enriched your life.